1940, we came here because there was a house that my father wanted to fix up for my grandmother. And so we'd just come out here on weekends, and then the house was something else. There were 2 tiny rooms. One room was for living, and there was a kitchen area, bathroom. But the other room, he had turned into a chicken coop, and he had roosts in there, and it was awful because it was totally chicken white all over. The neighbors next door were very nice. His name was Manuel Lopez, and my parents became very friendly with him. He was a stevedore who worked loading chips on the waterfront. So then when the war started in 41, he was going to be sent over to Belgium. He asked my folks, why don't you bring your family, come down here, live in my house while I go off to Europe? And they decided to do that. And I cried all the time. I hated it. I didn't want to be here. I was used to San Francisco, going to the show and having paved sidewalks. And here, if there were sidewalks, they were like in pieces. The roads, the ones that were paved, they weren't really paved nicely. The Cozy Cove had a gas pump in front, and then there was a store, and right across the street was a cabin club. Well, the cabin club was like a bar, but also they served really good Italian dinners in there. And when we were kids, my folks would take us there once in a while. In the early 1950s, I went to work at Mazzetti's. Clifford Mazzetti was married to my sister-in-law. They started here in 1929, and the bay almost came up to the beginning of the Order Court. They were building the road, which is now 101. They worked really hard to build those cabins in the back first. The cabins were very simple. Start, if you had to wash clothes, take a shower, go to the bathroom, you just walked across the road. There was a building there for that purpose. Right after the war, they built new modern cabins in back of the office. That's where I worked. I would give people the keys to go see the rooms, and the rooms were bare bottom. There was linoleum on the floor. There was no TVs. They were just plain iron beds. But, you know, it was clean and it was usable.
The Cozy Cove Motel, which used to be the Mazzetti's Hotel and Trailer Court, and then the Mazzetti's sold out and it became the Cozy Cove, and it was right there where our community park is now. And it wasn't a very attractive thing to come into town, and certainly the title indicated the kind of motel it was.
When the Mazzetti's had it and the Order Court was young, it was well kept, well maintained, nice people, and then as time went on and it was sold, it went downhill fast. There were a lot of one-night stands that used to go there, and the people knew it. I guess the cops were after them, I don't know. And it just became so seedy. I was embarrassed for it. And I felt sorry for the Mazzetti's because they'd worked so hard for it. They cleared all the buildings. Then the park sat sallow for a long time. It was just like a dusty place where it did nothing. Oh, that was the big controversy. They wanted to put a city hall there, and we were against it.
Fred Smith had this idea that it ought to be done by a world-class architect. And the architect that he wanted to use was one by the name of Michael Graves. He was a very famous postmodernist architect. There was no real discussion of any other alternative. The city council, they had to vote. It was 4-1 in favor of going ahead with the Michael Graves design. And that was a big upset in the community. And so what happened after then was that the former mayors were trying to figure out what to do. And unfortunately, Brisbane had, up to that point, had a history with the old timers of recalls. There were a lot of recalls in the early times, and fact, the reason that Anya got on the council was because of the successful recall. Then the thought was, well, but if you're going to recall them because you don't like the Civic Center, you got any options for what should be there?
Eddie Schwenderloff came up with the idea, hey, should be a people's park. I heard him say that in the meeting, and I thought, whoa, that's a pretty good idea.
And he really grabbed onto the idea of a park, and he had this design, and he had posted the design there right on the location of it was all just dirt then.
At the gazebo.
Basically what it meant was that 4 of the council members lost their position through the recall process because of the Civic Center. And the interesting thing is that nobody really was quite aware of how successful that park location would be.
Now that park is one of the best things in Brisbane.
It wasn't somebody thinking this is going to be the world's greatest thing, but it turned out to be.
And the Christmas tree, and then a lot of participation in making the playground better. That was another wonderful community project that everybody participated, the stars along the edge. It really is shows what a small town can do when we do it together.